What's up everyone? Welcome to this channel. Today we're going to talk about one of the most expensive delicacies in the world, caviar. The most expensive caviar nowadays is called Strutogard Bianco. It is also known as white gold of caviar. It is sold at more than 100,000 US dollars per kilogram. This is higher than the price of gold. However, there are also other types of caviar sold at the price of $60 per ounce, which is about 50 times cheaper. In today's video, we would like to talk about the story of how caviar becomes popular and the reason of the price difference. Let's go back to the period when the major powers of Europe were fighting for primacy in the Italian peninsula. After King Louis XII took control of the Duchy of Milan, which was previously held by the Sforza family, France replaced the Medici family in the Republic of Florence. In order to maintain the power and centralization of Papal States, and also get support from the public, Pope Julius II started implementing more liberal policies. He supported the Renaissance by commissioning a series of highly influential arts and architecture projects in the Vatican City, including Raphael's room and Michelangelo's paintings in the Sistine Chapel. Compared to the growing power of France, Papal State was in a relatively weaker position. It became very necessary to please French nobles during the time. Therefore, Pope Julius II threw banquets and invited aristocrats from France, and decided to impress them with richness and luxury. During the banquets, a special type of food was served. They looked like black pearl, but smaller. According to attendants' introduction, this small black pearl is called caviar from Caspian Sea, one of the most luxurious food from the East. After the first bite of the caviar, the French aristocrats were astonished by the taste. The slight saltiness accompanied by a mild ocean flavor was engraved on their memory, and their desire for this luxurious taste lasted for generations. However, French did not have or seen caviar again after the banquets in Rome, and caviar became a legend in France. About 200 years later, Peter the Great became the first emperor of all Russia. Through military campaigns and strategic alliances, he expanded Russia's influence and territorial control in the region, resulting in temporary Russian occupation of Persian territories along the Caspian Sea's western and southern coasts. During this time, an ambassador from Russia visited the Palace of Versailles and brought a gift from the Tsar to King Louis XV. The gift was caviar. When caviar was presented to King Louis, court orchestra stopped the music, the nobles hold their breath, and every official was waiting for the moment that French can have this delicacy again after 200 years. After the 13-year-old king gently put a spoon of caviar in his mouth, the whole palace was shocked and silent as little Louis retched a few times and spat it out on the floor. Then all the French officers took a bite of the caviar that was served to them. It was believed that everyone had the same feeling as little Louis. This became a very awkward situation. French were wondering why Russians sent them such ridiculous food as gifts. Russians, who were seeking for friendship, peace, and cooperation with France, were wondering why French were so obsessed with caviar. What French didn't know back then was, in Russia, caviar was a source of food for lower class and a popular dish during fasting season because they were cheap. As early as 1240, when the grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan, Batu Khan, visited a monastery in Euclid, caviar was served on top of hot apple as dessert to him and his wife Yildiz. Batu Khan was delighted and granted the monastery safe conduct. We may think that Russian caviar was a promising food. However, Yildiz hated the smell of caviar and left the banquet when it was served. Russian ancestors knew hundreds of years ago that caviar could be risky to serve for diplomatic events. What was the difference between caviar from the Pope and caviar from Russia? They all seem to be from Caspian Sea. Before we start answering this question, let's start with different fish rolls. Nowadays, most fish roll is served at sushi restaurants. The orange color roll is from salmon. Besides salmon roll sashimi, there are also salmon caviar. In caviar industry, roll from different type of fishes or animal can be called caviar. The only restriction is that the name of the fish need to be labeled on the package. There are orange caviar from salmon, yellow caviar from whitefish, red caviar from trout, green, yellow, black, orange, red caviar from tobacco. Even fresh eggs of land snails can be made to caviar. The color of snail caviar is white and it is often known as escargot pearl. However, the real caviar must be fish roll from sturgeon. Sturgeon have existed since early Jurassic or even earlier. The current species are very identical to their ancestors, indicating their evolution has been exceptionally slow. Several species can grow quite large, typically ranging 7 to 12 feet in length. The largest sturgeon on record was a beluga female captured in the Volga Delta in 1827, measuring 23 feet and 7-inch long and weighing 3,463 pounds. Most sturgeons are anadromous bottom feeders, migrating upstream to spawn, but spending most of their lives feeding in river deltas and estuaries. A female sturgeon can produce eggs weighing 11% to 17% of their body weight. In other words, a female sturgeon that is about 2 meters in length can release 400,000 eggs, whereas larger females can release upwards of 4 million eggs. The uppermost temperature for most sturgeon is around 72 Fahrenheit. Therefore, most sturgeons can be found between 40 degrees north and 50 degrees north. There are also few species that live in 30 degrees north. Based on the location, there are different types of sturgeon. Atlantic sturgeon, Chinese sturgeon, beluga, caluga, ossetra, sevruga, European sturgeon, green sturgeon, Gulf sturgeon, Siberian sturgeon, Italian sturgeon, Mississippi paddlefish, suckling sturgeon, etc. All these sturgeon's eggs can be labeled as caviar. They have different color, size, and texture. Is there a standard to determine the quality of the price of the caviar? Generally speaking, it has nothing to do with the taste, the color, or the nutrition. Only lineage matters. The top 3 most expensive caviar must come from beluga, ossetra, or sevruga. The color of these 3 caviar are dark, with beluga and sevruga range from light silver gray to black, and ossetra ranges from golden to jade to brown. They have intense creaminess and nuttiness complicated by tastes of the ocean. It is important to know that caviar must be served with spoon made of mother of pearl, tortoiseshell, animal horn, wood, glass, crystal, or even plastic, just not metal, as it oxidizes the caviar. The oxidation reaction happens so quickly, and even if only a part of the caviar scoop comes into contact with the utensil, the strong metallic flavor imparted to those eggs can disrupt the entire tasting experience. Among all types of spoon listed here, mother of pearl is the spoon you probably have seen in advertisement, in movies, and pretty much everywhere caviar is served. Why is mother of pearl widely used as the utensil for caviar? To answer this question, we need to talk about one of the richest kingdoms. Some sources suggest that the richest empires in human history was not in Europe, not in Egypt, not in China, and not in India. It was the empire that conquered Babylon and incorporated Mesopotamia, Persian Empire. Caviar from Pope Julius II came from Caspian Sea, and Caspian Sea located in north of Persian Empire. Therefore, it is widely believed that caviar was originally invented by Persian. What's the reason that the top 3 most expensive caviars must come from beluga, ossetra, or sevruga? Simple answer is all these sturgeons live in the Caspian Sea. When Persian Empire rose and reached its peak, China was in the spring and autumn period. Mediterranean was at the beginning of Greek philosophy. Eastern and Central Europe was in late Hallstatt culture period. Northern Europe was in late Bronze Age, and ancient India was in the period that Buddhism was founded by Buddha and Jainism was founded by Mahavira. During that time, porcelain was far from being invented. As such, in Persian tradition, caviar was never served with porcelain but mother of pearl. Based on what we discussed so far, luxurious caviar is an Iranian style than European style. It may be one of the few legacies passed down from Persian culture that we can still enjoy nowadays. Let's summarize the timeline of the discovery of caviar. After Renaissance, knowledge was no longer monopolized by the Pope or the Catholic Church as it had been in the earlier centuries. Also, printing presses revolutionized the spread of knowledge, making books more widely available to people outside of the church. Therefore, documentation controlled by the church became more decentralized. For the first time, French realized that as early as the 4th century BC, Greek philosopher Aristotle recorded the caviar as a high-status delicacy from Persian Empire. Moreover, they found out that Alexander the Great was known to have enjoyed caviar during his conquest. Furthermore, they learned that caviar was not only consumed as delicacy, but also thought to be medicinal properties such as improving stamina, strength, and vitality. Years later, they tasted caviar at the banquet thrown by Pope Julius II, and the legendary flavor was eulogized for many years while the nobles hadn't had a chance to eat the delicacy again until Peter the Great took over Caspian Sea. Eventually, French nobles had caviar again during King Louis XV's reign, which, as we mentioned earlier, turned into a disaster. Why was the Russian caviar different from Persian caviar? They all seemed to come from Caspian Sea. This question remained unsolved until 50 years later. In 1745, a boy was born in Sara, Greece. He had different titles in his life: fisherman, sailor, pirate, commander, prisoner, homeless, refugee, lieutenant, philanthropist, entrepreneur. His name is Ioannis Varvakis, and he's the person that introduced caviar to the world. During the Russian-Turkish War from 1768 to 1774, young Varvakis volunteered as an artillery commander and fought with the army of Catherine the Great. He spent his entire fortune on equipping his ship with cannons and crews for the purpose of fighting the Ottoman Empire. On the night of June 26, 1770, Varvakis' ship took part in the operation to set ablaze the Ottoman fleet in the bay to Cheshme. Having devised a daredevil plan, he turned his own ship into a fireship and maneuvered it right next to a large Turkish vessel, possibly the fleet's flagship, lit the torch himself and blowed it out of the water. Russian sailors rushed to retrieve Varvakis, who was seriously injured. After the battle, Varvakis' story was mentioned in an official report to Empress Catherine the Great, and he was made first lieutenant of Russian army and was assisted in the purchase of a ship similar to the one destroyed in the battle. When the war ended through the Treaty of Kuchuk-Kanaji, Varvakis returned to where he was born, Sara. Although being wanted by the Ottomans, he traveled to Constantinople, indifferent to the hostility towards him at every stage of his journey. Over there, he was arrested and his property was confiscated. Fortunately, because of his contribution to the Russian army, the plenipotentiary ambassador of Russia at Ottoman Empire, Prince Nikolai Rednin, a signatory of Kuchuk-Kanaji Treaty, secured bribes for the release of Varvakis. After he was released, he was broke and despair, and he decided to set out for St. Petersburg, seeking an audience with Catherine the Great. In a coffee shop in St. Petersburg, he met Grigory Potemkin, Russian General Field Marshal, statesman, and lover of Catherine the Great, who arranged an audience with the Empress of Russia. Varvakis narrated his turbulent life, recounted everything he experienced, and laid bare the despair seizing him. Either due to honor Varvakis' heroic act during the Russian-Turkish War, or was impressed by Varvakis' story or personality, the Empress gave him 1,000 golden rubles as a gift, and an authorization of unlimited and duty-free fishery in the Caspian Sea and the right to choose a place to settle in Russia. As a native of the sea from an early age, Varvakis was way ahead of the game compared to the Russian fishermen on the shores. In the northern Caspian, fishing business brought him a large amount of money and a fleet of 10 transport vessels. What made him wealthy was the caviar business. One day, as Varvakis was strolling along the banks of the Vaga, he noticed a peasant eating a black substance that he had never seen before. When he approached the peasant asking what it was, the peasant responded by saying ikra, which in Russian means caviar, and offered Varvakis some. Varvakis was thrilled by the taste of caviar. As Varvakis needed to travel to different European countries for the fishing business, he noticed that Greeks have strong passion for caviar. Because caviar was cheap in Russia, he decided to export caviar to Greece. Before executing the export plan, Varvakis conducted research over the historical records of caviar from Greece and Persia, and he noticed that there was a difference between Russian caviar and Persian caviar. The traditional method of preserving caviar in Russia was using wooden barrel with excessive sodium, while Persian caviar was used much less sodium. Now, there was only one problem. Without heavily salted, caviar would not keep long enough to travel far in the day's wooden boxes. As such, Varvakis brought in experts and soon figured out a way to preserve the caviar. Varvakis introduced the use of animal bladders, most likely from sturgeon or pigs, to create airtight containers. This prevented oxidation and spoilage. Moreover, with the better sealing method, he was able to reduce the amount of salt needed to preserve caviar, which enhanced its natural flavor and make it more appealing to the markets. Once again, caviar was brought to other European countries, including France. It took French nobles about 200 years to have the delicacy they had been dreaming of. This time, French nobles' satisfaction was achieved. 200 years later, they had the caviar which tastes the same as what their ancestors ate in Pope Julius II's banquets. With the invention of steamships, construction of railway system, the advanced Russian caviar became an international trend, and the caviar business not only made Varvakis a tycoon, but also increased the GDP in Russia. It was said that the income from caviar export business could cover the cost of Russian Navy annually. Thanks to Varvakis' entrepreneurial spirit, innovative storage methods, and influential connections, the caviar trade experienced a significant transformation. Driven by increasing demand, caviar becomes a luxury market valued at billions. As such, corruption, misappropriation, and smuggling occurred due to high profitability. During the 70s, it was sold for about $25 an ounce in the United States of America. It was said that all through the 1970s, Soviet fishing ministry officials smuggled precious Russian black caviar abroad in cans marked smoked herring. The caviar could remain edible for months if they were sealed properly. After shipped out of Soviet Union, the caviar was repacked and sold in Europe, with the Soviet conspirator allegedly banking their profits in a Swiss account that they used from time to time while on official trips of war. Soviet divided the profits garnered by the European from buying herring cheap and selling the caviar at its usual high prices. The operation was discovered accidentally. Some of the mislabeled cans found their way onto the shelves of the fishing ministry's ocean stores. For a while, Moscow shoppers who had paid $7.50 for a large can of smoked fish kept silent when they opened it to discover the valuable caviar instead. Until one day, a wrong man brought the wrong can. He was a police investigator, and when he found caviar inside instead of smoked fish, he decided to tug on this thread, and he pulled out the whole chain. About 200 members of the Ministry of the Fishing Industry were arrested, and the deputy minister was executed by shooting. The minister was fired and forced into retirement with Leonid Brezhnev's intervention to avoid damaging public confidence in the party leadership. In December 1991, Soviet Union was formally dissolved, and caviar had a new challenge coming. Before the collapse of Soviet Union, Caspian Sea was ruled by Iran and Soviet Union. Both parties implemented fishing policies to maintain the sustainability of production of caviar. There were strict fishing quota to ensure sturgeon populations can replenish and remain healthy. After the dissolution of Soviet Union, Caspian Sea borders 5 countries: Azerbaijan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Turkmenistan. As caviar business is very profitable, all these countries fish as much as possible, which led to a significant decrease in sturgeon in Caspian Sea. As the demand for caviar continued to grow all over the world, 2 solutions were found in this high profit margin business to meet the demand. One solution was from Soviet Union. As early as 70s, Soviet sturgeon catch the window as a result of a drop in water level and rising industrial pollution at the Russian end of the Caspian Sea. After years of research, Russian chemists settled on casein, a protein found in curdled milk, after experimenting with other possible bases for the caviar substitute. First, casein was mixed with gelation to produce a kind of porridge. Then, the porridge was poured into a steel centrifuge and mechanically agitated until the mixture emerges as a mound of little white pellets. At last, the pellets are then laced with quantities of sturgeon sperm for authentic taste, bathed with tannin extracted from tea leaves and stems for color, and finally given a salty bath, the same preservative used on natural caviar. Connoisseurs found the product slightly mushy, but at $5.90 per pound, compared to the $24.50 for the real caviar, this fake caviar held a significant market share during the 80s in Russia. While Soviet Union found a substitute for caviar, China took another approach to increase the caviar production. As early as 1900s, Russian scientists developed artificial spawning techniques for sturgeon, and they established the first hatchery on the Volga River. Later, Soviet Union conducted research on intensive sturgeon aquaculture and expanded the farming technology. Following the foundation established by Soviet Union, China began exploring sturgeon farming and, to all scientists' surprises, achieved important breakthroughs. While sturgeon can take 10 to 20 years to reach reproductive age, farming sturgeon demands significant funding, and caviar can only be harvested after 15 years. There's no way this type of food can be sold in low price. In addition, during the 15 years period, there are labor cost, time cost, opportunity cost, material cost, and etc. As such, sturgeon farming drives up the price even more. The breakthrough discovered by China's scientists reduced the maturation period of sturgeon to spawn by using recirculating aquaculture systems and man-made lakes to maintain optimal water condition year-round. The warmer, stable water temperature accelerates growth compared to the fluctuating condition in the wild. Moreover, China's scientists noticed that sturgeon farmed in 30° north can reach reproductive age faster. With these achievements, sturgeons reach reproductive maturity as early as 5 to 7 years in Yangtze River. Commercial sturgeon farming started in late 20th century in China, when China's domestic caviar market was relatively small, with demand mainly met through the imports from traditional caviar producing countries like Russia and Iran. Now, China has become one of the world's largest producers of farm caviar. In 2020, China produced 80% of the world's sturgeon, followed by Russia and Armenia. And more than 80% of the Europe's imported caviar originated from China. In 2017, Bloomberg reported that Kaluga Queen Caviar, a Chinese brand, was the caviar of choice for 21 of the 26 Michelin 3-star restaurants in Paris, including Alain Ducasse at Plaza Athénée Hotel. Seafood specialist Ari Rippard served it at Le Bernardin in New York. Lufthansa offers it in first-class cabins. Generally, there are two ways to extract the roe: C-section and Vivace method. For C-section, carbon dioxide is used as anesthetic, and sturgeon are washed with cold water. Then C-section is performed, and the roe is removed. The eggs are surrounded by a follicular cell layer that attaches them to the ovarian membranes. As such, workers rub and separate the eggs. Then the eggs are washed, salted, and packed. The whole process is completed in 15 minutes to ensure the quality of the caviar. Vivace method is another way which usually use hormone therapy combined with milking techniques to get the caviar. Therefore, a sturgeon that takes 7 years to reach reproductive maturity can be harvested a couple times for caviar. However, milking method is believed to cause broken eggs from stress and mishandled sturgeon, resulting in lower grade caviar. Some markets prefer the C-section. The most expensive caviar we mentioned earlier, Strotaga bianco, is made from the white caviar of albino sturgeon, a species that is virtually extinct in the wild. They are raised on a small fish farm in Austria, and their eggs are dehydrated, graded, and then mixed with 22-karat edible gold flakes. Caviar has long been associated with luxury and high social status. The journey of caviar from ancient time to current status reflects the human desire for delicacy and pursuit of luxury. Sturgeon live on the earth for more than 200 million years, and today they can barely survive in wild environment due to pollution, overfishing, habitat loss, and climate changes. This ancient fish that coexisted with dinosaurs managed to survive multiple mass extinctions, and sadly, they seem to figure out a way to survive through human activities by living in the breeding farm. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.